Welcome to the Right Way Sports Network. I'm Justin LaCertosa here with my co-host Jacob Aframian. Jacob, how are you doing today, my man?
I'm doing very great, Justin. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited that we finally got to do this, and I can't wait to break down all of the NBA head coaching hires.
Yeah, so I can't wait. There's a lot of new great head coaching hires to this year in the NBA. So before we get started, please download the TWSN mobile app to access all of our articles. We also have Instagram and Twitter. Follow us there at TWSN with 2 underscores and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We have daily live shows. We have daily video breakdowns, all that stuff. So please do all that. And today, let's get right into it. So Jacob, do you want to get started with the Boston Celtics new head coach, Ime Udoka?
Yep. You said it first. I want to make sure I say it right. Ime Udoka. Yep. Just want to make sure I get that name right. But yeah, this is a guy that had been around the NBA head coaching circle, I should say, for quite a long time. He was with the San Antonio Spurs with Greg Popovich. He spent a year in Philly, spent a year in Brooklyn. He's been around the block. He knows he's clearly ready for this job. Boston, I think, was maybe the first team to hire a head coach. I mean, if they weren't the first, they were right up there. They wasted no time. They clearly wanted this guy, and he wanted to be a Celtics head coach. I think it's a really good hire. As far as grades, which is what we're going to be doing today, I gave it an A-. I feel really good about Ime Udoka. I think that he has the ability that Brad Stevens didn't when it comes to connecting with players. And hopefully he can manage egos and just manage talent, because that's going to be very important. I think he's got a really good team next year with him. I really like the trade that Boston made when they traded away Kemba Walker and they got Al Horford and Moses Brown, which really solves their big man problem, which has been something that's plagued them for quite some time as far as just having an overall center and size in general. And I think that he's entering a good situation. He has really good structure and stability in an organization. He's got Jason Tatum. He's got Jaylen Brown, two star players that only keep getting better every year. And if I'm a Boston Celtics fan, I'd be pretty happy with the outcome of this hire.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is a great hire, and it's hard to really evaluate assistant coaches from an X's and O's standpoint. But what we do know about Udoka is that he's highly respected around the league. He comes from the Greg Popovich tree. Those are two very promising things to have in a head coach. And you obviously love the guys like the Brad Stevens, the Nick Nurses of the world, who are masterminds from an X's and O perspective. But getting a guy like Udoka, who will most likely be able to unite this locker room and get everyone on the same page in that sense, that's going to be really good for the Celtics team. Because although Stevens was great from the X's and O standpoint, although he was great with the clipboard, he wasn't able to do that very well in the past few years for the Celtics. So getting a guy like Udoka who could get that together with the Celtics, establish a culture there with guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the supporting cast, that's going to do wonders for the Celtics squad. And they've always had the talent. They've always went far in the playoffs when they're healthy. It's just about getting that guy who could get the locker room together in that sense. And Udoka, he's going to do exactly that with the respect he has around the league and the experience he's had around the league as an assistant. But let's move on. Udoka, he's never had a head coaching job, but one guy who's been around the league, he's been around the block as a head coach, Rick Carlisle, has been hired by the Indiana Pacers. And personally, I think Indiana, I have mixed feelings about this because I think Indiana should be in a rebuild. They should retool, but at the same time, if they want to win games right now, Rick Carlisle is the perfect coach to do that. This team, looking at the roster, they have all the offensive personnel in the world. They don't have much defense, and Carlisle can come in and, sort of scheme around and sort of game plan for this offense to be towards the top of the league with all this talent that they have on the roster. And especially with the draft coming up, they could get another offensive piece, maybe sign a few guys onto some smaller contracts. And I think Rick Carlisle, if the Pacers are looking to win now, is the perfect coach for this team. But Jacob, what do you think about this signing?
Well, I agree with a lot of the things that you said. I think that since Indiana clearly is in win now mode, that this is probably the best possible hire they could have had. And Rick Carlisle gave it an A- as well. I think that as great as he was in Dallas, I think that he needed to change. I think he needed to change, and I think they needed a fresh start equally. And I think that this is the perfect place for him to go as far as a place that he's coached before. He coached the Indiana Pacers did that quite some time ago, but now he's back. I really like this roster for what he wants to do. As you said, he's a pretty offensive-minded coach. This team is very well-rounded on the offensive end. I think the key for him is, which is not something he can necessarily control, is this team needs to be healthy. You got to have LeVert healthy. You missed TJ Warren almost practically the entire year. That was a big killer. They need but if you look at this team fully healthy, you got Brogdon, you got LeVert, You got Warren, you got Sabonis, Turner. That's a pretty damn good starting five, if you ask me. And last year, they grossly underachieved. I mean, it was Nate Bjorken one and done. Like, clearly that experiment did not work. They obviously want someone that has experience, has been through the grind, and that's what they got in Rick Carlisle. And I think it's going to work out for them. I think that Indiana, it's weird where they are, because you think that you could see them being easily a top 5 team in the East, but it wouldn't surprise you in the slightest if they barely get in the playoffs. Now, I think, and again, I just think that this is a good hire. I like it for Carlisle. I like it for Indiana, and we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, for this hire, I mean, I said it before, this is the perfect hire if they wanted a head coach that could win them games now. And the Pacers, they've been the epitome of consistent the past decade or so. They've made 9 playoff appearances in the last 11 years. Obviously, this year they didn't. But with all the controversy surrounding Paul George and Victor Oladipo in the past, they've managed to make it work for quite some time now. And as you said, if they're healthy, they could easily be a top 4 to 5 team in the East like they've been for quite some time in the past, or they could be out of the playoff race as a whole. But moving on to the next team, a team that's not in a situation to win now. They just blew it up this past trade deadline. That's the Orlando Magic. They hired Jamal Mosley, an assistant from the Dallas Mavericks, and Luka Doncic did want Jamal Mosley as the head coach of this team. He did promote that. But Jacob, what do you think about this hire? What would you grade it?
I think this is a very good job. I think this is a very good hire. I give it like a B, almost a B plus. I think it's in that range. It's really good. I like Jamal Mosley a lot. I remember hearing about him circulating with head coaching jobs last year. Obviously, he didn't get any, but this year he, was able to get one. I think this is a great hire for Orlando. I like the fact that they are hiring a young guy who does have experience. He's never been a head coach, but he's ready for this kind of job. I think that it's almost good that he can grow with a young team from that standpoint. And I pray and hope that they give him time. He's going to need time, because this is not a win now team by any stretch of the imagination. They made a lot of moves. They dealt Nikola Vucevic. They dealt Aaron Gordon. They got some pieces for those guys. They got young players like Wendell Carter. They got Markelle Fultz and others. So it's going to be interesting to see the kind of trajectory that they go on and what Beasley can do with this Mosley with this young team. And I just think that it's a good hire. I like it for Orlando. And, I think one thing I think is very important for young coaches is that they have to put a good coaching staff around them if they want to succeed. Because when you are, doing this for the first time, you need some help. You're going to need help at times when you just don't know how to handle a situation because you've never done it before. And I'm not entirely sure who he's put on his staff, but I hope that he's put experienced, smart people on his staff, because I think it will pay dividends for him and the team in the end.
Yeah, for this hire, I would probably give this around a B. And Mosley, obviously an assistant on the Mavericks, and he was under Rick Carlisle, who we just talked about, who's an offensive mastermind. He was also an assistant coach along with Steven Silas on the Mavericks 2 years back. And although Silas had a rough year on the Rockets due to all the injuries and all the controversies with James Harden and things like that, Silas is still a great offensive coach in this league. And he was really the Mavericks offensive initiator to an extent in 2019. And Mosley, coming from 2 really great offensive coaches, going on to a team who they don't have much offensive personnel. They're known for their defense with Jonathan Isaac, likely to draft Scotty Barnes in the NBA draft. They're known for their defense, and they also have guys like Wendell Carter and Mo Bamba as well. They're known for the defense, and Mosley could come in, as you said, grow with the squad and help them push towards a run within the next few years. Just get them together in the locker room, help them offensively. The main thing is trying to develop Jonathan Isaac's offensive game. Obviously, his health has not been great the past few years throughout his entire career. But if you could develop him into a two-way player, a legitimate two-way force, he's easily one of the better players in the entire league and an all-star caliber player. He just needs that offensive stability to get there. But now let's move on to the Dallas Mavericks, where Jamal Mosley just came from. They hired Jason Kidd, and in my opinion, this is the worst one of all of them. I give this one a C-. We saw Jason Kidd in Milwaukee a few years back with Giannis and Middleton and Jabari Parker. He wanted to trade Jabari Parker before he got hurt. He wanted to trade him when he was the second best player on this team, better than Middleton at the time. He wanted to trade him for who knows why. He was the one that made Giannis stop shooting. Remember, Giannis, when he came into the league, he had a solid shooting form. He had solid mechanics. Now, obviously, he's not known for his shooting. He's still one of the best players in the league, but he's the one that made Giannis stop shooting. And he really just hurt this team all around. And I don't like this for the Mavericks because although he is one of the all-time great point guards, Luka Doncic is on pace to be that as well. It's just tough because we've seen him in the past. He's not a great coach whatsoever. And if he tries to disrupt the shooting like he did with Milwaukee, that's going to be really rough for a Mavericks team that likes to space the floor out a lot. So, Jacob, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. This is not the worst one for me. We'll get to what I think is the worst one a little bit later, but I'm not crazy about this at all. I really don't love it. I gave this about a C plus. I was a little bit more lenient because I thought that Jason Kidd, he's a decent coach. I wouldn't say he's a bad coach because he is a decent coach. And even though he's in Milwaukee for a pretty short amount of time, they did grow under him. They didn't make the leap that they did with Budenholzer, obviously winning a championship and just becoming arguably the best team in the East. But he has just good instincts as far as being a coach. I think that what I don't love about this is that, like, to me, if I'm Mark Cuban and I want to keep it in-house, obviously he hasn't been a coach there, but he played there for a decent portion of his career. Jason Kidd, I'm talking about. I would have just gone with Mosley. I think that you're almost better off with a guy like Jamal Mosley, who's been around the team, knows the players, knows how things are done in that organization. I think it would have been a relatively seamless, I should say, transition. If something that would have made me think of that would be like Nick Nurse taking over in Toronto after they got rid of Dwayne Casey, just elevating a guy on the staff. And I think to me, what's important is that Luka approves this, because with the way that the NBA is going now, it's a very star-driven, player-driven. They have the autonomy kind of league, and I just think that if Luka's okay with it, then that gives me a little bit of faith. But yeah, I'm not sure if Jason Kidd is what worries me the most, I'd say, is I'm not sure that Jason Kidd is the guy that I think can take this team over the top. I don't see them getting much better under Carlisle. They haven't won a playoff series under Carlisle since they won the title, which was in like 2010, 2011. That's a long, long time. And I'm just not sure if Jason Kidd is the guy that's going to take you over that hump. I'm really skeptic about it, but I'm not willing to give it like the ultimate like hammer is like non-seal of approval, because I do have a glimmer of hope that it could work. I think that you talked about how the way they're built and how Jason Kidd's not like built the team around shooting. If I'm Dallas, I know that shooting is their strength, but to me, they've got to get a lot better defensively. They've been porous defensively. That goes from Luka to many of their players on their team. I think that they have to be able to find a team that's better defensively, that's not so hamstrung on shooting, and just find more of a balance. Because that does not mean that they shouldn't get rid of their shooting aspects as far as being a good shooting team, but you have to find a balance as far as like, we need to be pretty good on the defensive end. We need to be a lot tougher, but we should be able to, hit you in the mouth with the 3-pointer.
Yeah, and maybe Jason Kidd has a bounce back year with the Mavericks as a coach, but I don't like it from what I've seen in Milwaukee from him. I personally don't like this. Maybe he learned a lot under Frank Vogel, but I just personally don't like this. But let's move on to the New Orleans Pelicans. They had Stan Van Gundy this past year, and he really hurt the spacing of that team a lot. And now they have Willie Green, an assistant coach in this league. And I like this a lot, but Jacob, I'll let you start this off.
Well, so Willie Green is someone, I think this is maybe the most interesting hire out of any hire that's been made, because Willie Green has been an assistant coach for about almost 5 years, or around that 5 years, first with Golden State and most recently with the Phoenix Suns and Monty Williams. There have been a lot of assistant coaches that have had their names float around. He was not one of them. And like, if you look, he just wasn't a guy that was, even flying under the radar for the most part. He wasn't the guy that was getting mentioned. And now we saw how just out of nowhere, he's the leading guy to get the Pelicans job. Now, I like this hire. I'm cautiously optimistic. I like Willie Green. I think that he's had good experiences with Golden State and Phoenix. I think those are two pretty good organizations as of late. I think that what's clear about this hire, above all else, is that the Pelicans want to find the antithesis or the exact opposite of Stan Van Gundy. And I think they found that. It's clear that they didn't want a coach's coach, because if they did, they would have kept him on. And I thought it was unfortunate that he got the hooking so early. I felt like I just questioned, like, my thing with Willie Green is I like the team that he's got. He does have pressure from the standpoint that he's got to keep people like Zion happy. He's got to keep Brandon Ingram happy and other young players on that team happy, but they've got a really darn good roster. And if I'm expecting, if I was a fan, I'm David Griffin, the GM, I expect at bare minimum, you got to at least be on the heels of getting in the play-in tournament or the 8th seed. They got to be right there, because if they're not, then people like Zion, people like Brendan are going to start scratching their heads thinking, maybe I want to get out of here and this isn't the right place for my future. But with Green, I think that he has the ability to connect with young players, who maybe are not the stars because he wasn't a star. And I think that he has credentials, and I hope he does well. I really hope he does well, because I think that he has a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah, I love this hire a lot. And as you said, this was unexpected because he wasn't really in the head coaching rumors for a lot of teams up until this. And Willie Green, just looking at, he was on the Warriors under Steve Kerr. He was on the Phoenix Suns this past year under Monty Williams. And those are two phenomenal coaches to be under. Another thing, as I talked about earlier with Ime Udoka, he was under two teams that have amazing cultures and guys that just want to be there. And you look at the Warriors, they have Steph, they have Clay, they have Draymond. Those are three guys who are most likely going to be Warriors for life, not even just because they won games frequently, but it's also because they were able to develop a great and solid culture there. And it's just an environment that you always want to be in. And then it seemed like the Phoenix Suns as well. It seems like they're building that up as well. They just made the finals this past year. Monty Williams is one of the most respected coaches in the entire league. And this is a team that has a solid group of veterans, a solid group of young guys, and they just made the finals. That's going to really help their culture a lot. And I know Chris Paul had a lot to do with that as well, but if Willie Green learned something under Steve Kerr and under Monty Williams, it's that matters, that building a culture, it matters in this league. And I think that's really, really good for this Pelicans team, hearing what we've heard about Zion Williamson and his future, that he wants to be a Knick one day, most likely. That's going to be really enticing. And I think this is one of the better signings you could have. I would give it a B. I'm hesitant to give it a B plus or above, because we still haven't really seen him as a head coach, and he was just in the rumors for not that long. So I'm going to give it a B, but it could easily turn out to be one of the best coaching hires, if not the best coaching hire of this pool. Now let's focus on the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers, it's been kind of hectic with them, with Damian Lillard, and they lost in the first round to a team that didn't have their second best player. And this is the second year in a row they lost in the first round. And it really seems like they've hit their ceiling from the Western Conference Finals. They just hired Chauncey Billups. And I know you don't really like this hire. Personally, I think this should be around a C. This is probably what Damian Lillard wanted after Jason Kidd opted out. Obviously, he wanted Jason Kidd at first. He probably wanted Chauncey Billups second. And I think Becky Hammond would have been a better coach because she's way more experienced. She was under Greg Popovich, and she's coached some games before. But it's just, this is what Damian Lillard wants. That's probably why they made this hire. And Chauncey Billups just has the reputation around the league as a finals MVP, one of the better point guards to play this game. And if this is what keeps Dame happy and keeps him in town for another year or two, then I think that's a solid hire. But I think from a coaching perspective as a whole, Becky Hammond, who was second in this coaching pool, I think she would have been the better hire. But what do you think about this hire?
Yeah, well, obviously you echoed some of my sentiments, and I agree with a lot of what you said. I have a lot of thoughts about this. It's been well documented. If you people that follow our stuff at TWSN, you see I did videos on this. If you can check out my Twitter, it's under, you want to see that. I wrote an article about it. Why, I'm very not optimistic about this. I gave this a C minus. To me, this was I guess almost by far the worst coaching hire. I really don't like this, and I'm going to lay out why. If I'm Portland, I don't understand why, after you had Terry Stotts for 9 years, and he was a pretty darn good coach. Unfortunately, he could not get them over the hump, and they felt like they had to move on. All right, fine. But to me, if I'm Portland, why would you hire a guy that has been assistant for 1 year? Has never really has experience, but not a lot. He was a damn good player. I'm not going to deny that. And I like Chauncey, but for this job, I really don't like it. I don't think he's ready. I just don't understand. Like, to me, as you said earlier, if it keeps Dame happy, then fine. But unfortunately, that's the only discernible reason why I think this is not horrible. Because if you take that out, I think it's a terrible move. I really do. You mentioned Becky Hammond. Obviously, I have sung her praises. I think this would have been a perfect job for her. She has the experience. She's more than ready to take on a head coaching job. And I just think that she could have shook up the organization, shook it up in a good way as far as like making them tougher. This team is not nearly gritty enough. They're horrible. Them and Dallas are two of the most porous defensive teams that we've seen lately. I think they need to get better on that end. And I'm just not a big believer in this. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I wish Chauncey the best. I wish the Blazers the best. I'd love to see them win. But at the same time, this is a ginormous head scratcher. And if I'm a Portland fan, I'd be a little worried, and I would not be too optimistic. And if it's interesting how Damian Lillard wanted either Jason Kidd and apparently Chauncey Billups. Those are not. I mean, I get why he likes Chauncey. I mean, not Chauncey Billups, Jason Kidd, because he grew up in Oakland. He probably idolized Jason Kidd, but still not the best outlook, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, and as you said, he was an assistant coach for 1 year. The only real time I could think of off the top of my head where a guy just came into a coaching job with very little experience was Steve Kerr, and that's the only time it really succeeded. And personally, I don't like this hire. Again, if it keeps Dame happy, it's a good hire, but Becky Hammond is a more experienced coach.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to get this in. It's failed. It succeeded. Mark Jackson, I'm pretty sure, had very minimal experience, did a pretty darn good job with the Warriors. Steve Kerr, same thing with the Warriors. But it also hasn't worked. I mean, Derek Fisher, no experience. How'd that work out? Not too good. Ask Knicks fans, including myself. We were not very big Derek Fisher fans. Unfortunately, I think he was set up to fail, so it's not all his fault, but that's another story for another day. And I wouldn't say, I don't want to jump on this boat too early. And again, plenty of time. He's got time to grow. But when Brooklyn hired Steve Nash, I was very pessimistic about it. I really just didn't see it coming. I think no one saw it coming. And he did okay. He's got a lot of talent, but there were times where I'd watch him coach or make certain decisions. I just like, what is he doing? Like, I get worried about that as a Nets fan, if I were a Nets fan. And, I think it's very, very hit or miss. Luckily for Chauncey, Portland has a lot of pieces. They're going to have to make more moves in the offseason if they want to get better, because if they do nothing or, lose people or just keep the same team, it ain't going to work out. And we'll see what happens. I'm not too optimistic, but, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there definitely have been some coaches with little experience that go into the job that have worked out, but chances of it not working out are higher than the chances of it working out. But a guy who is very experienced in an assistant role, the last coach that was hired this offseason for the Washington Wizards, Wes Unseld Jr. The Wizards are another team that have their star player, Bradley Beal, potentially wanting out this offseason. They have Russell Westbrook in trade rumors. They have some young pieces around that team too, but the two cornerstones of that team might not be there when the season starts. But what do you think about Wes Unseld Jr. as a Wizards coach?
Yeah, I gave this a C+. I don't know much about Wes Unseld Jr. I mean, from what I know, he's been around Michael Malone for a long time in Denver. He's clearly, I think, ready for this kind of job. I think the only thing I get worried about is obviously his father, Wes Unseld Sr., was a legend as far as Wizards/Bullets players. He's highly revered. And I just hope that they don't keep thinking about him or just think of it as like a namesake thing when he's got the job or he struggles. I think that he's more than ready to be a head coach. I think he's obviously well respected around the league. What worries me is, as you said, the team dynamics in general, like what they want to do. Do they want to rebuild? Do they want to keep it going? Is Bradley Beal going to be there for the long haul? Is Westbrook going to be there for the long haul? That's what would worry me as a Wizards fan and just for the organization in general. I'm not too optimistic. Again, I thought they overachieved last year, especially the second half of the year. They kind of, pulled up from underneath them and just kind of rose above the challenges that they faced. And they finished the season off strong. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep that momentum that they had last year rolling into next year. They have good young pieces like Denny Avdia and Rui Hachimura and Thomas Bryant. But again, I'm not too optimistic.
Looking at this head coaching hire, first of all, no matter who we got, it's better than Scott Brooks. No matter who the Wizards got, it's better than Scott Brooks. And Wes Unseld Jr., regardless of if Beal and Westbrook are traded or not, I really like this hire for them. I would give it a B because Wes Unseld Jr., obviously a very experienced coach under many great head coaches in this league. And obviously you said it could be a namesake thing, and that's very possible. But he's a guy that his dad obviously is a Wizards legend. It's going to fit the culture. He's going to want to be there. where his dad played basketball and where his dad really grew and developed into the player that he became. And I think that's where his primary spot wants to be. I think he's going to be loyal as a head coach. I think he's going to fit the culture as a head coach. And if Beal and Westbrook leave, I think I've heard he's a great developmental coach and he's helped Jokic become a little better on defense. Jokic, obviously not the greatest defender in the world, but I've heard he helped his hands a lot on that end of the floor. And that's very promising for a team that doesn't have much defensive personnel. The Wizards have Rui Hachimura, Deni Avdija, Daniel Gafford, all guys who don't stick out defensively. Gafford was amazing defensively on the Wizards, but other than him, Avdija and Hachimura had his moments, so did Avdija on that end. But if Unseld could really develop them to great defensive pieces, which they have the capability of doing so due to their physical attributes, that would be massive for the Wizards' success right now and for the future. And with Westbrook and Beal there, if they do stay, I think it's also a great hire because Wes Unseld Jr., as I said, this is a place where I think he wants to be. I think this was probably his top landing spot and where he wanted to be the most. And if he could unite the locker room, Scott Brooks, one thing I'll give him credit for doing well, he was able to get the guys together and the locker room was in a great spot. That also had to do with Russell Westbrook a lot, but Scott Brooks was a solid players coach as well. But if Unseld Jr. could take that to the next level, that would be even better. And there's just a lot of talent on this roster that he could help develop. I've heard that he really wants to help develop Deni Avdija, who had an up and down year based on the way he was used. He was kind of set up to fail this year, but he still played well in the role he was given. But if he's put in his primary role where he'll succeed the most, that's the best case scenario. And I think Unseld Jr. will realize that. So I'm really happy about this hire, no matter whether Beal or Westbrook get traded or not. I think this is a great hire. Do you have anything else to add about these coaching hires?
No, I think we did a pretty darn good job of summing it all up. I think that we covered all the basics, covered everything we need to cover, and I feel we did a darn good job. And I think it will be very interesting to see how all these coaches fare out this upcoming NBA season.
I completely agree. And there were there were some great coaching hires this offseason. There were some bad ones as well. But that's going to do it, guys. Please subscribe to the TWSN YouTube channel if you want to see more videos like this. We put them out daily. We pump out live shows every single day. Follow our Instagram and Twitter at TWSN__. We've got great things coming. And download the TWSN mobile app to access all of our articles. We've got daily articles from all of our writers here. So please stick with us, subscribe, follow us on all of our social medias, download our mobile app. And thank you for watching. We'll see you guys later. Peace.